We don't know what we don't know. Most people are willing to listen, and a lot of people are willing to learn. There's
Mm.
facets of the business that I'm not going to be the expert in, but from a care perspective, I am. And so I think that people trust that. When customers are calling in and asking questions, they're not getting people on that call that don't know what they're talking about. Your CSAT goes up. There's positive impacts across the board. The people handling those calls feel confident and comfortable with what they're doing because we've taken the time to take them into consideration. We need spaces where people can be genuinely, authentically themselves and ask questions and not feel silly about it.
If leaders really fundamentally understood their process end to end, executives are saying, hey, we're going to make this change, we're going to make this change because they understood operationally what those steps are. They'd be able to say, hey, well, if you do this, then this is going to happen. But many times, because that isn't the case. They don't know what the process is. A lot of times, processes or products are getting put inside of operations, and then there's this expectation that this is going to be the outcome, and that's not the outcome. And then now it's sitting in operations, the operations leader's lap to figure out how to make this outcome become a real thing. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Tipsy Thursdays. I am your show host, the Contact Center Whisperer, also the CEO and founder of Solid Rock Consulting. And I am back with another episode. Listen, we are in season 6 and we are talking about all things the expanded or hybrid workforce. And what do I mean by that? I'm talking about anything that you employ as a force on behalf of your organization. And so many times when we think about workforce, when individuals and organizations think about workforce, they think about the very tactical nature of workforce. They think about the forecasting, the scheduling, and the intraday, or the worst, right? They think, oh, it's just a workforce tool, right? And when I'm talking about workforce, I'm talking about any force that you employ on behalf of your organization. And so that is the expanded workforce, meaning AI, that means humans, that means machines, that means automation. And so, as we're talking about AI, this AI era, your workforce has just expanded, right? It did not shrink your need for the function of workforce and having a workforce strategy. The mere fact that AI is becoming more and more popular and entering the workforce more and more means that your workforce strategy has to be airtight. You have to have a strong workforce strategy to not just think about your humans that are in your workforce, but also consider the AI that's in your workforce and what that means for how you engage with humans, whether that's on the employee side or on the customer side. And so, with that being said, I am super excited to welcome an epic guest. Listen, y'all wait. Y'all know I say this about every guest, epic, because we only do great over here. We only do great over here at Tipsy Thursday. So every guest is epic. But this guest has a special place in my heart. I am so excited to welcome and introduce to some, present to others, the Desiree Neuphresh. Desiree, thank you so much for being a guest on our show, season 6 of Tipsy Thursdays. You could be anywhere, but you decided to come hang out with us. So thank you so much.
Absolutely, Juanita. Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. I'm so excited. I have been thinking about this all week. I cannot wait to get into all of the things. Thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Absolutely. So, okay, I have to calm down. Y'all see my little vein, okay? All right. So, okay, before we hop into the season's questions, tell people a little bit about yourself, where you're at right now, and what your day-to-day looks like. What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so a little bit about me, Desiree Neuphresh. I am currently in a VP role for a customer experience operation. And my day to day looks a lot like putting pieces of a really big puzzle together. I do a lot of engaging with the team on a daily basis and really trying to help strategize about what's to come for future state. We want to
Mhm.
have enhancements and improvements. We want to take our operation to the next level. And so I think about a lot of future state ideas,
Mm, mm,
wish list items, roadmaps, things of that nature to see where are we going to be a year from now? Where are we going to be 2 years from now? and really excited to kind of talk today about some of the AI pieces because we're seeing in our day to day that that's going to be huge.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things I love the most is while you're currently today looking at like how you put all the pieces together, one of the things that stood out to me is like you're saying, I'm thinking future state, what's
Yeah,
coming, what's happening in the next year, right? And how do I get ahead of that? And having
absolutely.
personal experience with you as one of our customers, I know that that's exactly who you are as a leader. You're always like, okay, this is what is in front of us, but this is what's coming. How do we plan for the future while also being very present in the current, right? So
Absolutely.
I absolutely love that. Okay, so are you ready to hop into the questions for Tipsy Thursday?
I think I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, let's go. All right, so the first question is, Desiree, what's one thing in customer experience or workforce that still makes you a little tipsy, like a big challenge that you're still seeing right now?
The operational reality versus the expectation at
Mm,
times from
mm,
others that aren't in the day to day. I think there's a gap. Oftentimes, you'll see that in companies, you'll have people that are very tuned into the truth and the reality of what really happens at the frontline level. And when other leaders that make business decisions that could potentially impact that frontline don't have the viewpoint of that operational reality, it really can lead to bad training, bad
mm.
policies, bad outcomes in general. And so it's really important for me that myself and my team help to educate others internally on what we see in the day to day, how things really work versus what they look like on paper. Because I think that once we can instill that in others, they take that with them as they make those decisions behind those closed doors, right? And so I think that's probably one of the main areas that I would say most companies probably face, is just not really understanding that operational reality and the impacts of the decisions made.
Yeah, that's so huge, and it's absolutely correct, right? Like
Yes.
what you made me actually think of is Undercover Boss, right? The reason
Yeah.
Undercover Boss is so real, right? Is like, hey, y'all are making these decisions in corporate, right? Or you're making these
Yes.
decisions in headquarters or at the executive level with this huge gap between what the operational reality is of
That's
what
right.
actually happens. And until you go on Undercover Boss, right?
Yep.
Many times the executive is like, oh, wait, well, who made that decision? Why do we do that? It's like, yeah, you, Bob. Bob,
That's right.
you
That's
the one
right.
who signed, you
Yep.
the one
You signed on
decided
that
to,
dotted line.
yeah, you brought
Yeah.
that vendor in, right? As a VP of ops, how do you close that gap? What are some of the things that you do to kind of close that gap between operational reality and the expectation?
I think for me, it really stems from human centeredness. And I say that because if I can walk into a room and engage people in a way that puts people first,
Mm,
and develop a trust that's there, that they understand that the decisions I make and the things that I do, of course, always going to look out for the company. But if you're looking out from a people perspective and you're able to put into words how that impacts the decisions in the day to day, most people are willing to listen and a lot of people are willing to learn. We don't know what we don't know. There's
mm,
facets of the business that I'm not going to be the expert in. But from a care perspective, I am. And so I think that people trust that. And when you back that up with actual factual data and stats, right? There's no refuting that. And so I think that once people can get immersed in the understanding of that operational reality, they then start to piece things together for themselves and say, oh, wait a minute. If I make this operational decision over here, then this is going to be the outcome. And then with that outcome, oh, I better go talk to so and so because that's going to mess things up on the front line or that's going to
mm,
change the process for the front line. So you just start to get people into a rhythm. And I think that once they're in it, everybody feels better because then when customers are calling in and asking questions, they're not getting people on that call that don't know what they're talking about, right?
mhm,
Your CSAT goes up. There's positive impacts across the board. The people handling those calls feel confident and comfortable with what they're doing because we've taken the time to take them into consideration. And so I think as long as I continue to lead with that people centric mentality, including the internal teams and the frontline teams, everybody else kind of gets on board, and it's just really appreciated, I think, once everybody has a full understanding.
I love having you as a guest on because I get to talk from personal experience working with you as a leader, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've seen you do really well when it comes to closing this big gap that, between operational reality and
Yep.
just the expectation from an executive perspective is you would always be like, you're always like, especially when it comes to workforce things, right?
Yep.
Hey, I'm not sure. Let me loop in SRC to see how this is going
Yes.
to impact us operationally. Like, yes, it sounds good and this sounds like we want to do this, or we sound like we want to put this in the contract, but let me make sure that we can, from a workforce, our workforce can actually fulfill on this request, right? So when a customer comes or a plan may come and say, hey, we want to do, this amount of calls, right? You are always so great with saying, hey, okay, let's see how soon we can fulfill that, right? And
Right.
what that looks like in reality. And so I think one of the things that, not think, I know just from working with you, when you think about that big challenge between the operational reality and the executive expectation, or even client expectation, customer
Right.
expectation, is tapping on whoever needs to be tapped on. I'm using workforce in this example, but it could be the training department, it could be, product
Yep.
department, it could be any department, right? To say, okay, how is this going to impact operations? How is this going to impact us? And how do we actually realize this and operationalize this in real life? And
Yep.
you are by far one of the best leaders that I've seen do that, right?
Thank
Going
you.
and getting all the pieces and saying, okay, now let's actually see how we make this work in real life. So kudos to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. All right. So next question is, are you a business owner or a CX leader running a center without a dedicated WFM team? Well, maybe you may have one person on the ops side covering the whole function. Or maybe your WFM team actually sits inside of your BPO, but not on your side. And that's not on you, it's a structural gap. But it means you're making calls and strategic plays, likely missing service level or overstaffed and bleeding budget without anyone dedicated to reading your data, turning it into insights that align with your CX strategy. So we're doing something about it. 100 free data analysis and strategic workforce assessments where we look at your phone data, your forecasts, your schedules, and intraday performance. And in 72 hours, we hand you back real answers, not a pitch deck, just the insight that a dedicated WFM leader would normally give you. I did this for a client named Sabina. She was running 3 contact centers operating at a 59% service level. And within 60 days of her data insights, we moved her from a 59% service level to an 82% service level. And what mattered most is that she got her evenings back. She got her time back. She stopped doubting her data, and she actually had a strategy that aligned to her CX strategy. This is completely free. We're doing it for 100 leaders between now and September 15th. So if you are a CX leader and you're running a center between 50 to 5,000 employees, you have your phone data, you don't have a WFM team, I highly recommend that you take your data, turn it into insights, and you apply below and let us help you. See you soon. What's one transformation that you are leading right now that you're like, this is whether big or, small, impact
Mm.
is impact, right? So what's that one transformation that you're like, I'm leading this right now and I'm super excited about the legs that it's growing?
I think current day, I am in the process of turning a more reactive, high complaint operation from a customer experience perspective to a root cause driven service model. I think it's really important, right? I think I recently had a conversation with a colleague, and we were talking about how oftentimes symptoms are things that people chase. And while that can be important and can kind of lead you down the path potentially to get you to where you want to go, really root causing things is what we have to do. I do that in my professional life. I do that in my personal life. And so I'm the type of person to kind of picture things as a garden, and you're going in and you're just weeding, pull the things out that don't need to be there. Find where, is it that your plant isn't really growing, or is there something else growing around it that's sucking up all the water? What is it that is causing the issue? And then fixing that will make everything downstream better. So that's my main focus right now, is really getting everybody into a root cause analysis type of mindset, and then figuring out how to structure those findings so that they're easily digestible for other people to help make decisions that they may need to make, and to also include, cost impact and things like that, right? Everybody wants to know, once you get to the root of something and you fix it, what is the new outcome going to be? And so it's really doing that type of modeling right now that I think is most important in my space.
I absolutely love that. From your perspective, I'm interested to hear your answer on this. From your perspective, how is AI redesigning work and the workplace?
Oh man. So firstly, AI is going to be the path forward. I think that in my current space, I'm seeing ways that it is able to transform the day to day, allow a lot more work to be done. And I think that although it doesn't replace judgment, right? AI is AI, and then you have to still use judgment behind that. But what that does is it really exposes who has the proper judgment, who has the capability to take the deeper, less transactional things and turn things that AI can produce into something insightful, into something productive, and something that can help you transform your operation. It's not about replacing people so much as it is replacing processes that are just manual and maybe don't need to be done. Work smarter, not harder. It comes to mind. Yeah.
This is my last question for you. What's your one piece of advice for a leader that is getting ready to think about, or they are even in the throes of it now, thinking about, okay, I have an AI workforce and I have a human workforce. How do I blend them together and make them both work for the betterment of the company, betterment of the humans, again, both customers and employees? What would be your one piece of advice for them?
I think it would be to really know your people and your workflows. If you don't
Mm,
know what you don't know,
mm,
you can't use the AI to assist, right? So I think sometimes people go into it looking for AI to come in and just solve things. They purchase products,
mm.
they go see demos, and they're like, "Yes, this is the answer." But if you don't know things deep down in the weeds from A to Z, how do you know what you're solving for? And I think that that's where people often go awry, is they purchase the product, and then it can be really powerful, but you don't know what to do with it. So I would say my true advice would be, take a step back, make sure you're getting with the people who do the process, that can tell
Mm,
you start to finish what it is that they need help with. Listen to that, do some of those analyses to say, hey, these would be the top three things that would net us the most, whatever. And then from there, dig down into the weeds and figure out where is the inefficiency, and then model your AI towards that. And I mean, you can't go wrong with that, right? So it's really know your people and know your process. Know what you
I,
want.
I, I absolutely. That's been a theme, though, that's been coming up in season 6, right? When I ask
Yeah.
leaders, what's that piece of advice, right? That's been a theme from leaders that I find that are leading transformations and kind of leading it well. The first thing that they're starting with is the process. They're not starting with product. Process over
Yes.
product. Oh, I
That's
think
right.
that's a
Put
good
that on
one.
a shirt. We need a
That's a
shirt.
shirt. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Process over process, or I mean, process over product has been a theme that has been coming up in season 6, right? Hey,
Yep.
what is your process? What is your workflow? What's your customer journey? Know what that actually is and what you're trying to impact, because you don't necessarily, like you said, I don't need to impact the entire end-to-end process. I may be saying, oh, it's 10 steps. I'm just going to impact step 3. And because step 3 is so impactful, it has a trickle down impact to everything
Yes.
else, right? And so
Yep.
I think that that's critically important, because when you pick product over process, right, then what you end up with is a product that you're like, where exactly does this fit at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or oh, it can fit under
Yeah.
all of this, but we haven't figured out how to actually, and so you get this underutilization, under adopted, tool or solution, which is a great tool. It could be a very well so a great tool, but it's underutilized, underadopted because you haven't, as a leader, set to think of through the process, right? And the
That's right.
process, right. So I think that's critically important. And while it seems like, oh, that's just a simple thing, right? Like, duh, yeah, everybody knows that. Everybody doesn't do it.
That's right. And some people don't know that.
Yeah.
Some people haven't had the conversation to receive that advice to know where to go. They just know that they want to do something. And
Hmm.
so there has to be more discussion. You know, I like to be real. I just like to keep things real down to earth. Like we just need to be having these discussions in rooms with people so that they can have the space to say, I really don't know what I'm doing, but I know that, the expectation at work is that I'm solving for X. I've never done this before. A lot of people don't have that type of space. And so that is also equally important. We need spaces where people can be genuinely, authentically themselves and ask questions and not feel silly about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that I don't have nothing else to add because I'll go, you'll get me
We
on
can
the
do
whole,
this all day.
right. I'll have to have you back for part two on Tipsy
Yes,
Thursdays. Man, listen, thank you so, so much for being a guest on Tipsy Thursdays. Again, you could have been anywhere,
absolutely.
but you decided to come hang out with me. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Juanita. This was
If you want
awesome.
to find you, where can they find you, Desiree?
I have a LinkedIn. I don't do a lot of socials right now, so no other handles there, but you can definitely locate me on LinkedIn.
Guys, you heard it here first. Oh my gosh, what's the episode not epic, right? Like Desiree came in, she talked about one of the things that is still a big challenge and makes her tipsy, right? And that is the operational gap between operational reality and the executive expectation, right? Many times there's this huge gap between what is real operationally and what and can be done versus what the expectation is, which immediately made me think of Undercover Boss as she was talking about. I was like, and this is why this show exists, right? Because I believe that that is a big challenge. And I believe that the last question that I asked her around, what's the big tip that she would give or piece of advice is, start with process over product. I think that that would help to close that gap, right? Like if leaders really fundamentally understood their process end to end, executives are saying, hey, we're going to make this change, we're going to make this change because they understood operationally what those steps are. They'd be able to say, hey, well, if you do this, then this is going to happen, right? But many times, because that isn't the case. They don't know what the process is. They don't know what those steps are. A lot of times, processes or products are getting put inside of operations, and then there's this expectation that this is going to be the outcome, and that's not the outcome. And then now it's sitting in operations, the operations leader's lap to figure out how to make this outcome become a real thing. Right. So again, so many nuggets. I hope that you picked up these nuggets because Desiree came through dropping so many nuggets. Those were probably my favorite two that she dropped. Listen, you already know what to do. If you want to be a guest on Tipsy Thursdays, leave us a comment. I'm interested in what was the biggest thing that you took from this and what are you going to do as you're thinking about your workforce going forward? How are you going to drive outcomes and what do you want to talk about next? Until next time, go be great and let's make impact. See you guys soon. Bye.